21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Who wants to discover their full potential through being an entrepreneur that serves the world? My name is Brett Penager, and I recently published a book entitled Larger Than Life: In Pursuit of Discovering Your Full Potential. And I have a background of a lot of struggle in order to get to a point where I'm proud to say I've been able to build a multi-state business over $100 million. And I'm looking forward to being able to share that journey so that you can scale your business and you can discover your full potential in your life. My background is being a child who wanted to be a business owner and own my own business ever since I was in 6th grade at 11 years old. I had the opportunity to watch a video during class, and it was about Earl Nightingale, and it was called The Strangest Secret. And at that time, it was the highest recorded spoken word recording ever made. And he asked a simple question: why do people become who they become? And as he goes through a story of 100 men starting off at the same time with the same abilities, with a future that was bright in front of them. And as time progressed and they were all excited about, what they could accomplish in life, the next thing you know, by the time they reached 65, some startling statistics showed up where less than 4 of them were financially self-sustaining. And so he wanted to know why people become who they become, and what the answer was is you become what you think about. And from that moment, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if that's the case, then I'm going to become a girl? Because that's all I was thinking about when I hit puberty at the time that I first heard this. And then I'm like, no, that's not going to be the case. But if I can do anything that I think about, then I want to own my own business. I want to serve millions of people worldwide. I didn't know what it would be. I didn't know what the product was. And then I wanted to make a ridiculous amount of money. I figured, well, if I can serve people and build a business to do that, why not have the financial resources that come along with it? Well, it took me 6 businesses to learn how to actually have a successful business. And so I started multiple businesses. I have a background as a wrestler and a wrestling coach. So I've been involved at a very high level, up to the Olympic and World Championship level. And at the same time, I still had this dream of owning my own business and failing forward. And I failed forward in a business in Amway. I failed forward in a business that I started that was a travel company. I fell forward in a business that I started that was a wrestling camp based on some expertise that I had. I failed forward in another business that I started with my best friend, and that didn't work out. And then finally, with the right people and the right intention and the right timing, I was able to partner up with some incredible partners, and we built a one-of-one company, a unicorn, and the first company of its type in the healthcare profession in chiropractic that entertained and was able to have a transaction of over 9 figures through the private equity space. And so that journey is part of what I'm excited to share with you, so that you can not only fail forward, as many of us entrepreneurs do, but the distinctions that it takes in order to find what lights you up and what it actually takes to take that dream and that goal and that inspiration that's within you and take that to the world in a structure that is sustainable, that can serve not just you during this lifetime, but that can serve your family and your family's family. And I like to think from a multi-100-year perspective, your children's children's children. based on what you did at the point in time that you lived your life while here on Earth. One of the things I'm really excited about in this podcast, where I have the opportunity to share with Martin, is the tenets that I put together in the book that recently published called Larger Than Life: In Pursuit of Discovering Your Full Potential. And many of those tenets are things that are very simple to understand. They're things that anyone can learn and do and apply if they'd like to. And what I recognize in the process of it is, quite simply, I believe that genius is simplicity. And so there's 7 steps, 7 tenets rather, that if done in succession, one after another, can lead you to not only being larger than life and playing that out in your entrepreneurial dreams, but it also works for anyone that wants to be larger in life, whether they are a parent, a teacher, an athlete, a business person, a politician. It doesn't matter. The tenets are based on what it looks like for humanity as a human being to ascend to levels that then can serve the planet based on the measurable success that you're able to produce, that then serves others and also leaves a trail and a path that others can follow to do the same thing for themselves. When we talk about success, one of the things that's really important that not only I learned in my journey as an entrepreneur, but I really learned it as an athlete. One of the things that's really important is being able to measure it. And when I talk about being larger than life, I'm not talking about an ethereal, emotional story that's created about someone who's larger than life. Being larger than life means that you've measurably done something that is extraordinary by any measure. And whether that means you have been married for 50 to 60 years, which is extraordinary by any measure to the same person, whether it mean that you are in the top 1 percentile of your graduating class in high school, whether it mean that you were the champion of a tournament or a discipline that you got involved in, whether it mean as a business that you made more money than you spent and you scaled and served hundreds, thousands, and or millions of people. That's measurable. It's something that's really important that I really believe in today's day and age. There can be a lot of feelings that go into, well, I think I did really well. Well, we just want to measure it. And the way you do that is you just look at exactly what is measurable at a high level. And let's take something that most of us would know. Many would probably know an Elon Musk. How do we measure his success? Well, we measure that based on the industry that he's changed and altered. We measure it on him being the wealthiest man in the world, I believe. Maybe him, or I know Bill's not in the conversation as much, but perhaps. And so measurably, you're like, oh my gosh, he is the best in the world. In my space, also as an athlete and a coach, it's really easy to measure. And today happens to be the opening ceremonies of the Winter Olympic Games. And you measure it there. You either win the gold medal or the bronze medal or the silver medal, and everybody else is a participant. It doesn't mean that they're not good, but that's what we're talking about, measuring success. It was interesting. I was part of the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta as a staff member and a coach for the team. And one of the things that was really interesting is one of the slogans that they had plastered up on one of the buildings in downtown Atlanta. It said, "You don't win silver, you lose gold. And that's it. It can be straight to the gut. But at the end of the day, measuring success is just that. And so, what we're going to talk about when we're talking about measurable success, we are looking at how do you take what it is that you've done and or you want to do so that you know that you've demonstrated what's necessary so that you then have the knowledge and the experience of what that shows up to be. And what's interesting is in these types of conversations is a lot of people, when you talk about measuring, they look around them and they see, well, I'm better than my neighbors, or I'm better than maybe perhaps some friends or whatever. What we're talking about is measuring it on a global level, on a global level. And so from that standpoint, on larger than life, what are some of the things that it takes to do that? One of the things I got really clear with early on as a younger child and an athlete, after I had this epiphany that I wanted to own my own business, I wanted to serve millions of people, and I wanted to make a ridiculous amount of money, is the first thing I had to start measuring. Well, geez, what's a successful business and what's a ridiculous amount of money? I didn't know all of that at that time. I was in sixth grade. However, as I started getting involved in a sport that I fell in love with, I got lit up about in wrestling. All of a sudden I could start seeing the measurements of what that was. And so for me, measurably, the thing that I wanted was to be the best in the state, to be the state champion. And I'm from Ohio. It's a state here in the United States where I live. And for us, for all of us as athletes, that was the goal, measurably, to be the state champion, the best in the best in the state measurably. And that is meant that you had to do something that everybody else that was in that same weight class or that had that same opportunity didn't do. And so what you learn in accomplishing something like that is you learn distinctions that are not rare, but that are very specific to the experience of succeeding versus the theory of, I think it probably looks like this. In the book, I've really shared and laid that out on one, what it looks like to be larger than life. What are the principles that you need to operate your life by? And not only how to measure it, but the importance of finding people who have already done it, because they're going to give you insights that others who have not accomplished it at that level just don't know. It's not because they're not well-meaning. It's not because they don't love you. It's not because they're not trying to support you. But if they haven't achieved it, they don't know. And so they're operating out of a void of, let's call it, knowingness on what it really looks like. And I'm really excited about being able to take what I've learned and paying that forward, taking the baton and paying it forward to you and to other entrepreneurs and people who want to be larger than life so that they can understand what they have to do in their own space that they get lit up by, which is, by the way, principle number one, get clear on what lights you up. And then once they get clear on that, and there's some very specific distinctions in around that, the next thing to do is, man, if I want to be larger than life, I'm going to have to be able to measurably succeed at a really high level. And so the next one is I want to find somebody who actually did what it is that I want to do. And in my case, whether that be a state champion, I want to be a state champion. So I find a state champion who knows what it looks like. If I want to be a multimillionaire, I find somebody who is a multimillionaire so then I can learn what that looks like. If it's, I want to be a mother of 5 children and I want them to have the best, life ever, I want to find a mother that has 5 children who have incredible kids in every imaginable way, however you want to measure it. And so, in finding somebody who's already done it, in today's terms, that would be called the hack, right? The shortcut. Otherwise, we often seek advice or counsel from people who may have some level of success, but if it's not measurably what you want to ascertain or you want to rise to, then they're going to be able to tell you what they've done and maybe a little bit less than that, but there will be a law of the lid that they're not going to be able to help you at the next level. I was able to see that firsthand as a coaching educator with the United States USA Wrestling, with the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee. And my job at that time, back in the early 90s, was to put together a coaching program where I could teach parents and coaches how to coach their athletes. And in order to do that, what I ended up doing is learning everything that I could about the best coaches in the planet, the best coaches in the United States, what it was that they did that had their athletes that go on to measurably perform at extraordinary levels. One of the things I found was the biggest challenge were parents who thought they understood what it looked like to take their kids to a high level, but they never succeeded at a high level themselves. And what ends up happening a lot of times is they would lead their kids down a path that they thought would work, but those who actually know what it looks like are like, oh man, you might want to back up a little bit because you're going to burn your son or your daughter out. Like they're not going to be able to make it to the levels that you want because that's not what it looks like. And so in the book, when I talk about number one, get clear on what lights you up, and then number two, find someone who's already done it, I can't tell you how important that is as a very simple principle that very few people do. And the book outlines why and how to do it and what to do about it so that it's something that anybody can do. But I'm telling you, those two things, two of the 7 steps that we have alone can help you no matter where you're at as an entrepreneur, where you're at on measuring what it is that you would like to achieve, and then taking that to the next level for yourself. Let me give you an example of what that tangibly looks like. When I was coaching at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, the goal was to be an Olympic champion, period. Not an Olympic medalist, that's always great, but to be an Olympic champion. And one of the things that was really interesting is while I was at the Olympic Training Center, we had training camps all the time where we would bring our best athletes into camp so that they could train for the upcoming World Championships or a tournament, the Pan American Games in our case, or the European Games, and so forth, so that they could then qualify for the Olympics. And at this particular training camp, we had, oh my gosh, probably about 9 Olympic champions in the room, both from the United States at some point in the past, either whether it be in the 72 games or the 80 or 88 and so forth. We had Olympic champions that were from other countries because we had Russia at that time who was in our room training with us in support of them being their best because we had a lot of the people who were best. I share all of that to say there was a young man who had just become a national champion in the NCAA tournament here in the United States, which is not the Olympic level. However, he was a national champion, so he all of a sudden thought he kind of had it all laid out. And I remember he's going through some techniques, and we had several Olympic champions, one who was a dear friend of mine by the name of Dave Schultz. Also, some may have seen his story in Foxcatcher. And Davis walks up to him, he looks at him, and he's like, hey, listen, I know that you've done really good in college at this level, but at the Olympic level, that move doesn't really work. And let me tell you why. And I'll never forget it. The guy goes, oh, well, Dave, that might be true for you, but I'm different. For me, that's not how it works. And hey, listen, I really know because I was the NCAA champion. Well, he was talking to somebody who won 3 NCAA championships and a world championship and an Olympic champion. So it just quite a difference in understanding. And so Dave's like, okay. And so he goes back and he starts doing this move again. And then another Olympic champion comes over and he goes, hey, that I'm just letting you know, I know maybe it worked for you, but it doesn't really work at this level. It's different. And he goes, that's what Dave just told me. He goes, yeah, but that's not me. I can't do it like you do. Well, I share all of that to say he did not listen to what 2 Olympic champions told him he needed to change. Very small, minor details he needed to change in order to then be able to compete at that level. And this young man didn't He wasn't an All-American the following year. He didn't even make the national tournament, and he never was able to compete at the Olympic or the world level because he already thought that he knew what it looked like. And so when I talk about finding somebody who's already done it, I really, really mean that. The critical importance, because it might be one thing, just one distinction that you're like, oh, I didn't know that that would make that big of a difference. Well, it does. And if you find somebody who's already done it, then they're going to be able to teach you and show you exactly what that looks like. In the organization that I was able to build with my partners, we're all entrepreneurs. We are raise them up by the bootstrap types, and we didn't go to school. None of us worked in a big corporate environment where we understood this trajectory and this ladder that you have to climb. None of us got masters of business administration, so we don't have MBAs. And we're the classic entrepreneur who just has a vision. They see what they want, they learn a level of expertise to apply, and then they just get to working. That simple. Well, what's interesting, and I think it's powerful to share, is what it takes to build a business and what it takes to run a business can be very opposite, very different. And so along the way in business, when I talk about find somebody who's already done it and then model yourself after that, in business, we didn't really have a lot of people to model, but we had a picture of what the business should look like. Now, what was interesting is we have chiropractic. We built a chiropractic firm, and right now we have 162 offices nationwide, East Coast to West Coast. Again, doing well over $100 million. Our valuation is pushing a $500 million right now if we were to go to market and sell the enterprise. What I'm sharing is along the way, we worked with a lot of chiropractors who some had moderate success, some had, decent success, but they didn't have success to the level that we're talking about. And what's interesting is oftentimes you see clear as day that if you don't find somebody who's already done it, you see that they are the biggest hindrance to themselves based on exactly what I was sharing from the athletic perspective, someone who already thinks that they kind of have a handle on it. And so you can go one of two ways there. One, how big is your dream? I love there's a quote by Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Roman emperors. Dream big dreams, for only they have the power to move men's souls. At the end of the day, how big is your dream? I have a good friend of mine, Dr. John Demartini, who is a world-renowned expert in human performance. One of the things he always talks about is if you want to be really important in your country, you need to think national. You need to think worldwide. And so, whatever level you're thinking at, that's the level of the dream that you really want to start ascertaining. In our case, in the company that I had built with my partners, our vision that all human beings discover their full potential was so enormous that even though we have developed the largest privately held chiropractic organization in the world, even though we were the first to have a nine-figure transaction in the private equity world, even though we took on and brought a lot of chiropractors who then raised their vision outside of just a sole proprietorship, which was pretty common in our profession and still is, into how do we scale this to touch more and more people, regardless of what aspect that you want to look at it. At the end of the day, we're like, there's 8.2 billion people on planet Earth. So as big a deal as you might think it looks today on what we've been able to accomplish, we haven't even scratched the surface of what's available in the future. Now, I am moving out and have moved out of the day-to-day operations of building that unicorn of a company. And now my vision is how do I impact 8.2 billion people on planet Earth so that they can then learn what it takes to be their very best. And I'm very clear. The reality of it is that very few are going to take that on. But those who do, I just want you to know that what it takes to do it is something that is learnable by anyone. When we're all born, we have natural gifts and abilities, but for the most part, we're a blank slate. And so we learn by what people tell us and they show us, and our five senses are triggered by what we see, what we touch, what we hear. And so if you were born in China, you know Chinese, and that's the world that you live in. If you're born in the United States, you know English, and that's the world that you're immersed in. It doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. It just means that's what you know. And so when we talk about finding someone who has already done it, getting lit up about what it is that you do from an entrepreneurial side, it is really, really important to sometimes expand your dream so that that's far bigger than just yourself. Because if it's just about you, you're going to make a decent impact, perhaps. What I'm talking about, and I shared in my book, Larger Than Life, is something that goes past your lifetime, something that is generational, not just in the wealth that it can accumulate, but in the impact that it can have. And all we have to do is look backwards and we see people that we're still impacted by today. We have a Sam Walton from Walmart. He's no longer here, but Walmart is still continuing. We have a Henry Ford. He's no longer here, but Ford Motor Company is still continuing. I mean, take your pick on whatever you think is a magnificent, test to entrepreneurship and what it leaves behind. You have Apple. Most everybody here worldwide knows what Apple is. Steve Jobs is no longer alive, but Apple still remains. So we're talking about larger than life. The company built and we're now committing myself to do based on what it is that you provided, you've done, you've produced measurably, that makes a difference in the lives of human beings so that they can do the same for themselves. As we were building my company, along the journey, I moved outside of my chief marketing officer role. And we replaced my position, as we were growing, again, find somebody who's already done it. It was something that I hadn't done. And so we're like, well, let's find somebody who has operated at a very high level. And one of the trainers that we had asked me to come back about a year later, after I was outside of my position working in another role within our company. And he wanted to interview me about how this whole thing unfolded and the company that I had built and the marketing machine that is second to none even today. And he started asking me some questions about what my future held. And I remember I looked deep within for a moment, and then just out of the depths of my soul, what came up was, my purpose in life is to support 5,000 people in discovering their full potential, and what they build and leave behind will be measured by them having a combined net worth of $100 trillion. And this was about 15 years ago. And I remember as soon as I said it, I started crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could wrap my head around, I'm pretty good at math, going backwards, oh my gosh, 100 trillion, I could wrap it around a trillion, barely, maybe even 10 trillion with 5,000 people, but 100 trillion? And I just gave up. I'm like, listen, if that came out of my mouth, that's what my purpose here on life is. And so part of what I've created and larger than life, and part of what I'm committed to doing, is to serving those entrepreneurs who want to scale and blow up their business, serve their business on a global level or a national level, depending on what country you're in. It doesn't matter. And within that, I now am providing coaching so that I can do that for others and teach them, again, find somebody who's already done it, the exact same principles that are applicable no matter what business you're in, no matter what profession, no matter what discipline. The principles are universal, which then allows you to then just take those principles, apply them step by step, and then each one of those we can dive deep into to really get the nuances and the characteristics and the distinctions that show up with those who understand exactly what it looks like. I know who I'm talking to. Many of y'all out there are incredibly successful. Many of you are so successful that you are the best in your family, or the best in your state, or you're the baddest mamma jamma perhaps in your country. What I'm going to challenge you to do is be the best in the world, and what that looks like. And from that standpoint, we're going to make a magnificent difference together. And so you can find me really easily. I'm committed to helping you. And if I can't help you, I can connect the dots to those who can, because I'm constantly learning, which is also one of the principles in the book. Commit yourself to endless learning. I'm still learning every day. There's no arrival point, and I don't plan to at any point in time. And in that process, I keep meeting people that I know can serve someone, that know distinctions, they know businesses that I don't, and they know disciplines that I don't. And then I can just connect the dots to those who I know will be able to benefit from it. So reach out to me. You can go to belarger.com, and there I am, Be Larger Than, BeLargerThan.com. And you can reach me at brett@belargerthan.com. And from there, we can entertain a conversation to see what I can do to help you, what I can do to serve you. And especially if those who want to scale a business to 100 million or more, which I have done, so I have the experience measurably of, and you want to sell your business perhaps in the private equity or venture capital space so that you can not only own your business and not have your business own you, I can help you with that and connect the dots to those who supported me all along the way and are still supporting me and helping others do the same thing and blow far past that. So I'd love to work with you. I'd love to meet you, and I'd love to be able to share what I've shared with you so that you can not only discover your full potential, but leave a legacy behind for your family, your communities, your state, your country, and the world at large.
"21st Century Entrepreneurship" with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.